Let's talk about building a dream team, because if you're growing your interior design business, hiring is inevitable. But how do you do it, right? How do you set new hires up for success while protecting the culture, the creativity, and the standards you've worked so hard to build? Well, today on The Business of Beautiful Spaces, I'm joined by Jamie Van Kuyk, the owner and lead consultant of Grow Your Team. Jamie is hiring and onboarding expert with over 15 years of leadership experience. She is dedicated to helping women entrepreneurs hire with clarity and confidence. Her bespoke hiring framework is designed specifically for small businesses just like ours. So in this episode, we're diving into the best practices for onboarding and setting clear expectations when bringing on new team members into your design business. And whether you are hiring your first assistant or expanding a growing team, Jamie's insights will help you do it with ease, confidence, and strategy. Let's get into it. Hi there, interior design lovers. Welcome back to The Business of Beautiful Spaces, the podcast where we blend design inspiration with all behind-the-scenes tips and tricks you need to thrive in your business. I'm your host, Laura Thornton, and with over 27 years in this interior design game and running a 7-figure design company, trust me, I've seen it all. I want to be your interior design bestie. I want to help you build the business of your dreams, make more money, and yes, ditch the stress along the way. I've been doing this for a long time, and now I'm sharing my knowledge with all of you, my fellow designers and decorators. All I ask in return is that you like, review, and follow this podcast wherever you listen, so other designers can find us and learn more too. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into making 2025 your best business year yet. Welcome back to The Business of Beautiful Spaces. Good morning, Jamie. How are you today?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very excited that we're going to talk about onboarding in your business today because I get asked this question quite often. When is it time to hire? Who do I hire? So I know and how do I hire? So we're going to talk about that all today. But I'm wondering if you can just start off by telling us how you got into the shift and transition from corporate career to becoming the hiring consultant for small business owners.
Yeah. So Laura, I will try to tell you the quick version of it because it could be a pretty long story because it wasn't a direct path, but it all started with, I always knew I wanted to start my own business. I just never really knew what I wanted to actually do. I was working for an international marketing company and I knew I really didn't want to start a marketing business. That wasn't my thing, but I was like, what do I want to do? But my thing was go and learn everything I can about leadership and running a business while I'm working for someone else. So at least I will have those skills when I go start my own business. Fast forward to after I had my second daughter, returned back from work after maternity leave. My mom is watching my daughter. I knew that was always a short-term thing because my parents are snowbirds. I live in Florida. They summer in New York. Once they left for New York, I'd have to have something else to do with her. Our oldest was in full-time preschool. And I couldn't find a daycare that I trusted because with our oldest daughter, things were good with her daycare until it wasn't. And that whole thing of like, oh my gosh, now I have to trust someone again with my baby. I couldn't do it. I couldn't find a daycare that I liked, combined with a really bad day at work, where it's like one of those days where everything feels like it's going wrong. And I was just like, that's it. I'm done. I'm just going to become a stay-at-home mom. So that way I don't have to worry about any of this stuff. I don't have to worry about daycare. I don't have to worry about bad days at work. That thought lasted about 15 seconds before I said, who am I kidding? I am an ambitious, driven woman. I like working. I feel like if I leave my career to become a stay-at-home mom, I will end up resenting my kids because I will give up a huge part of me in order to do that. So I said, all right, how do I solve this problem? And I was like, this is the motivation I need to actually start that business I've always wanted to start. I can start a business slow at home while I have my daughter at home. I'm like, I'm going to do it. At that point in time, the business that we started was a software development company because my husband at the time was a software developer. We had always talked about kind of doing that together. He'd be the programmer, I'd run the business side. And my thing was like, okay, well, we need to get this idea off the ground. I'm going to learn how to program so I can help you. I lasted 6 months and realized I hated being on that side of the tech world. I was miserable. Like the software development came really easy for me, but I hated it. I was so miserable. Went to a conference that was about like leadership and software. And I was just like, after the first day of that conference, I was having dinner and I said, I will never have this level of passion for software and leading software projects and leading software companies that the rest of these people have in this room. I need to figure out what else to do because this is not it. And I was like, I'm not going back to corporate because I felt like if I went back to corporate, I would never leave again. So I realized during that time that I liked consulting because the business that I left, the company that I left in corporate, they kept me on for a few consulting projects that all had to do with leadership development. And I was like, ooh, I like this. I want to help companies with leadership development. But what should my actual focus be? What should I be selling? What should my packages be? I'm like, I have no idea. So I started going around to our events with our local chamber and just networking and just wanting to do some market research. And I kept finding myself speaking with small business owners at all those events. And when I'd be like, okay, well, let me just figure out what their challenges are in business, almost every person had a challenge around hiring. And at first I was like, well, I don't have an HR background, so I'm not the right person to do this. But I'd give them advice based off of my experience hiring. And they'd come back and they're like, oh my gosh, Jamie, that worked. Give me more. Can I hire you? And at first I was just like, no, 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 no. Like, I don't think that's my niche. That's not what I'm going to do. And finally, after a few months, I was like, why am I trying to find something when something is right in front of me that I'm giving advice? People are seeing the positive impact. Let me do this. So that was about 2018 that Growing Your Team was officially born. And so it's been since then that we've been helping small businesses with hiring. We provide hiring guidance and education. We do full service recruiting and also do it yourself tools for the person's like, I just need the guidelines and I can do this and I can get through this myself.
That's awesome. I know I should be talking about onboarding, but the whole like lead up, I imagine a lot of people listening, especially moms, were nodding along with the daycare because that you're like, yeah, I'm like, that's my story. Like my son was in daycare and I was working and he was getting so sick all the time. And they finally said to me, like the doctor said, if he has one more ear infection, he's going to have tubes in his ears. And I was like, I'm done with this. Like I was running ragged, trying to get back to the daycare by a certain time for him to get picked up so that I didn't get billed the extra $5 an hour. So many women listening are like hearing that and just nodding along because that's a lot of us, how we started our businesses, just to have that freedom to not have to run that race or have our kids and trust people. You know, I think a lot of designers listening to, we are control freaks.
Right.
So that
I know
giving
I
up
am.
that control is huge. So sorry to sidebar, but when you were saying, I was like, yes, I can connect with all of that. Okay. So getting back into best practices for onboarding. So when do you recognize people start? I'm going to assume people call you when they already needed somebody 6 months ago, but are
Oh,
finally burnt
yes.
out. But so if we get past that part, how would a business owner decide who is the best person to hire? Or do you help them through that process?
Yeah, so it really depends. Most of our clients come to us already having a general idea of what position they need to add. They might not have everything fully figured out yet, but they have a rough idea of I need this type of support. But some of our clients don't. Some of our clients are come to us and just say, I need help. Can you help me figure out what I need to delegate? And so if people don't know what to delegate yet, we help them work through everything on their to-do list to really figure out what's going to have the best ROI to get off their plate now. I know like one of the things we were talking about real quickly before we started the episode, it's like, yeah, a lot of, in your space, a lot of times it's not hiring that second designer. It's hiring that person that's going to support you, whether it's that bookkeeper or that assistant. And I find that a lot. It's you need someone to support your work, but what does that look like? What do you actually need based off of your strengths and based off of what's going on in your business today? So we will sometimes help people figure out who you need to hire in terms of tasks. Then no matter where they're coming into us, whether we're helping them figure out the tasks or they already know the tasks to delegate, we're then helping them figure out, well, what does this ideal candidate look like? So you need someone to do these tasks, but what does that look like inside your business? What is your culture? How do they fit in with your leadership style and things like that? How does it make it so this person is right for you? Because one of the things we always like to say is just because someone's good at what they do doesn't mean they're right for you. So how do we identify what does it mean to be right for you? So that way you can really focus on finding that right person throughout the entire hiring process instead of finding someone who can do the skills, but you hate working with them.
So I mean, I haven't applied for a job and done an interview in over 30 years, but I know the newer trend with my friends who are in corporate and changing jobs, they get down to even doing like personality tests. Are you red? Are you yellow? Are you Enneagram A, B? Like, is that something that small businesses should be getting into? Meaning, like, you probably are at the first stage of your job, like of your career, where you've got a little bit of money left over. You want to make the right decision on who to bring into your space, but you also want it to be a good fit, like to your point about like the work culture fit, but also like not have a personality clash. So is that something that is still happening, or we don't apply that in a small business?
Yeah, so I am a big I like personality tests. I don't like personality tests during the hiring process. I
Okay.
don't feel like they actually give us a whole lot of information during the hiring process that lead us to making better hiring decisions. I feel like they're a great tool to learn how to manage people. Sometimes I do sometimes have clients that really want to make it a part of their hiring process. And so what we'll do then is it's always at the end, like, or really close to the end. And we're trying to really dive more into things that we've already discovered during the interview process. So we want to confirm things. So if we're like, I have a feeling that this person operates this way in the workplace, I don't know if this works well for me, or I think this will work really well. How do we confirm it? Sometimes we'll bring out the personality test there. One of the things that I will say is good about personality tests in small businesses is your business is small, and you yourself have certain leadership styles and tendencies and how you train people and how you interact with people. And you don't have this super large team that's helping you do all that. So you're really one-on-one with all your employees. So sometimes if you know that you have a really strong personality trait that would show up on those things. Like you're very, very detail oriented, or you lack the details. You might need someone that complements you in one way or another, or fills in the gaps. And sometimes the personality assessments can help us figure out how you will work with this person. So it's not going to tell us, is this person right for the job? Can they do the right skills? It's how are you going to work with this person? How are you going to be able to manage this person? And if you don't have a lot of super strong leadership skills, because maybe this is your first time ever leading people, it might be beneficial for you to find the person that's easier for you to manage. So they're not so far off on that spectrum of whatever the results are on the assessment, depending on which one that you're doing. They're closer to you, or they're one that complements you, because maybe whatever your assessment style is, if you have someone that's just like you, that's actually going to cause a lot of clashing, because you guys are going to be competing versus helping each other out. So sometimes that will help us like figure out, can you manage this person well? So I think that's the right thing to do. But a lot of times we look at personality tests and we want to like pigeonhole people. We want to say that only people of this results buckets can do well at this job. And that's not true. So when I was first introduced to personality tests, it was back in my corporate days, and I had a team, I think about 12 people. And on my team, I could rank them. I'm like, these are my top performers. These are my average performers. These are the ones that need a little bit of help along the way, that need a little bit more of my attention. If you just looked at the top performers, their assessment results were all over the place. There was no consistency there, because they each tapped into their skills and were able to do the job well, versus like saying, this assessment type is what succeeds in this job. So it's always about how people use their skill sets in the workplace, not necessarily just what personality they are and what the results are.
And just so anyone listening, I should have clarified, because I did say, are you red or you're yellow? There is a book that's called Surrounded by Idiots, and it basically gives you the 4 types of human behavior broken down by color, and it's quite interesting. But it also gives you insight of how to deal with people who fall into these categories. So you can use
Yeah.
it as a tool also, like with your clients. Like if you have a client where you're like, oh, he's a clear yellow, you can really use that as a way to learn how to communicate with them. So sorry I didn't clarify sooner, but
Yeah.
that's for anyone listening. And there's other personality tests also, obviously, but that was what
Yep.
I meant by the color, because someone might be like, what is she talking about? So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I
And
think they're great. Like, as you said, to talk to
yeah,
people and manage it. Like, that's how I learned to be a better manager. Cause I was like, this matters to this person. This doesn't
that's
matter to
right.
this person. So I can
Yeah.
change my conversation style and communication style based on what they need.
Yeah, it's so helpful in so many ways. And like I remember opening the front, 'cause someone else told me about it. I opened the front cover and just read like the high, like no, and I was like, oh, well, I'm clear, like there I am, right? But anyway, yeah, it's something where you can use that as a tool in multiple places in life and in business. But is there like a magic number that you like to say that this is a good number for someone to start getting, you might have like down to 3, 4, 5 people to consider, and then wheedle it. Is there like a magic number, or you just this, narrow it down? These two look good, and let's decide. Is there some kind of formula?
Yeah. So you're talking about like number of people to interview or consider?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. To
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always say no. There's not a magic
Okay.
number because someone is good and right for the job because they're good and right for the job, not because they're the top of 10 candidates or 5 candidates or whatever that magic number is. And if you interview 5 people and none of them are right for the job, why should you settle? Why should you bring someone in that's not right for the job? So I always say we want to interview until we find that right person. And we also want to evaluate each person individually. Is this person right for the job? Yes or no? Is this person right to move on to the next round of interviews? Yes or no? When it gets to the end, if you have 2 people that you're deciding, then obviously you have to start comparing them to each other to say which one is better, which one should I hire now, and really look at them and compare them. But I'm a big proponent of every step of the way, we look at each candidate as an individual. Are they right? Now, obviously, there are times where we can say, well, there's 10 candidates that are right. I don't have time to interview 10 candidates. In those cases, you might then start saying, well, how do I rank these candidates based off the information I know to say, all right, I only have time to interview 5 people right now. Which 5 do I think are the best of these 10? And then just keep the other 5 as a maybe in case I need to go deeper into the pile, in case I need to bring more people in. But I don't think there's a magic number. I feel like when we get too focused on a number, we disqualify highly qualified candidates because we start to find reasons not to bring them in. And we're starting to kind of sometimes make up reasons why not to bring them in. We're starting to dissect a resume in ways that it shouldn't be dissected. We're bringing in biases and things like that. So unless you don't have the time, interview the people who are qualified. Don't bring in people for an interview that are not qualified, and don't cut 1 or 2 people off from the list just because you want to narrow it down to a certain number. And also for a
So,
second round of interviews, move forward who's qualified. Don't focus on a
mm.
certain number.
So I mean, that makes logical sense to me. I also feel like gut has to have, like, I always trust my gut. Like, I trust who I connect with. I trust that there's like one of my early hires was somebody who came to me with 0 qualifications, but I knew her from a very, like, when she was little, she went to school with my oldest son. And she came in, and it was the height of COVID. We were swamped, and she, wasn't didn't have qualifications to do anything. And I said to her, I don't have a job for you. But if you want to come in for a few months and do, like, I had like a pile of like stuff that just needed to get done. I always have like a pile of paper on my right hand. I'm like, I got to get through this like binder full of info. If you want to do it, you can do it. And she did it in like a week. I was like, okay. So I started giving her more and more tasks and more and more tasks. And she has been with me moving on to 7 years, has fell in love with design. Now is a designer, went back to school at nights. She's been full-time with me for years. She is probably, and anyone else who works here is going to be, she is my most valued employee. And it was gut. I knew that, like, she needed something. I knew that she would be a hard worker. I knew because we had a connection, she would work harder for me. And she is smart and she has figured it all out. But it was a gut feeling, which I know is not a great way to make big business decisions. But in this scenario, that really worked for me over hiring somebody. I was like, all right, I'm going to give her a shot. Maybe she, and that's when I realized I needed someone to do more of my like admin work. Great. But I get that gut isn't really like, the best way to make decisions, but it's got to have some, like, the connection has to have
Yeah.
some play in here that, like, you have a good vibe. Or just like clients, we have some clients who are like, I got a bit of an icky feeling with you. I don't want to, like, there's got to be some rapport that comes into play as well. So I
Right.
guess,
Exactly.
yeah, okay. So then my question
Yeah.
from there is, okay, so now we've covered the what we want the job to be, and usually it's the stuff we don't want to do, and we've covered the who it's going to be and the how we're going to do it. Can we now jump into, we've made the hire, we've got someone who's going to start coming in. How do we set clear expectations with new hires when we haven't done it before? If we don't know
Yes.
how do we set those expectations for success so that we
Yeah.
aren't making, bad decisions for them, feeling like we're not setting them up for success, but that we don't know where to start as the first time hiring an employee.
Yeah. Yes. But before I answer that, because I think that this is great, and I always feel like this is the forgotten part of hiring, the onboarding and setting expectations. So yes, I want to dive into that, but I just want to go to the example about your team member that you absolutely love. Gut does play a role in it, but I always say we have to make sure that this person can do the job that we want them to do before we really listen to our gut to sway us too much. If your gut is telling you, I absolutely cannot work with this person, then listen to it because you
Trust
do have
it.
to work with
Yeah.
this person. But if your gut's telling you, I want to give this person a chance, still make sure they can do the job. As you said, you knew she was smart. You knew there was a lot of things she was capable. She just hadn't done this type of work yet, but transferable skills go a long way. And you weren't throwing her into design work. You were saying, hey, here's some basic admin work that needs to get done. Those things that she was able to test out and you could see how she was doing and then giving her more. So the expectation wasn't her coming in and being a designer. It was coming in and being a basic admin. It was, here's a few projects. If this doesn't work out, then we can go our separate ways and type things. It's like you're just going to give her more and help train her. You knew that you had the capacity to give her a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and train her along the way to get her to where she was really using her skills fully and being able to now to this point where she's gone to design school and things like that and really grown with your organization. And I feel like we really need to understand what we have to give and what we want when we go to hire someone, because there's other people that hire, no matter how smart they are, would never work out because they didn't have the time to sit down and give off the basic tasks. They needed someone to help them with the higher level work right away because that's where their focus was. They didn't have the patience to train and teach and start small and build the way up. So you have to know what's important to you. And I feel like this really ties into those expectations. If we want our team member to do something well, we need to really understand what that means to do it well. What are we wanting our team member to do? And then tell them, because if we don't know what we want them to do, how are they supposed to know what they're supposed to do? And sometimes we're like, well, I just need them to help with this project. Well, what does that actually mean? What steps are they helping with? How much control do they have? How much responsibility? Where do you fit in? What are those handoffs? You really need to figure out the process and what part of the process they're going to be touching and working on.
Yeah,
How
I
you're going
think
to get them
process
the
is
stuff.
huge. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you have to have a process before you hire anybody in your business. Otherwise, you're both going to fail. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. And the process before you go make your first hire, I will tell you that map it out, but it will not be perfect because once you throw a second person into that process, you're going to realize, oh, I never thought about that handoff. I never thought about this. This doesn't work once there's two people in there. And you're going to change things. So know your processes, but don't get married to your processes until you have a team and you can really see how things flow. And even then, things need improvements over time. So always be willing to be flexible and change as it's needed. But with setting the expectations, as I said, we really need to tell our team members what it means to do something right. And so I always say you have to challenge yourself of what it means to do things right. If all you can think of is because I said so for what it means to do something right, we might need to let go of control a little bit. Maybe these files don't need to be filed exactly this way. They can be filed a slightly different way because you can still go and find what you're looking for. But then there's other stuff in your business it's where it has to be done a certain way. This is why our clients hire us because we promise them X, Y, Z. So this has to be done this way. Otherwise, we're failing on our client promise. This has to be done this way because depending on exactly what your company does, there's certain things when it comes to regulations and codes and things like that. If you're getting into bringing in some of those other elements of design, certain things have to be done a certain way. Otherwise, there are consequences for it. But then there's the things where it's just like, it's just been done that way because I like it. And nobody knows at the end of the day. It's not impacting my clients if it's done differently. It's not actually impacting my business, but it's impacting our ego when it's done a certain way. So sometimes we need to let go of our ego and say, their way might be better. Their way might be more efficient. And so we really need to know what does it mean to do something right and what is a suggestion of how it should be done.
Let's face it, running your own interior design business can feel overwhelming. But guess what? You don't have to do it alone. I am so excited to introduce a brand new way to get the support you need. one-on-one mentorship with me, Laura Thornton, your interior design bestie. In just one focused hour, we'll dive into whatever you need most, whether that's pricing strategies, client management, presentations, attracting clients, building up a repeat business, or just getting out of the hamster wheel. You'll get clarity, strategy, and expert advice based on my 28 years of running a thriving business and over the last decade, a seven-figure design firm. This is your chance to get real answers to the questions you've been dying to ask from someone who's actually been there and is currently still walking the walk. Book your session as you need it. There are no strings attached. You'll walk away with personalized, actionable advice that you can implement right away. One-on-one, 1-hour sessions as you need it. Head to the website or click the link in the show notes to book your mentorship session, and let's build a beautiful, profitable business that you've been dreaming of together. I like that because I know I'm guilty of it even now. I check like a presentation and I want everything in me to move like the stuff around. And I have to be like, this was a project that nothing's wrong with it. It's just not the way I would do it. And the client doesn't need to know that I would prefer the cabinet to be on the left side versus the right. Like they don't know. It's a hard thing to give up control at any point in your business for sure. And so to have to let things go, like you're right. And sometimes there's been clearer, more accurate ways. I'm like, that makes perfect sense. Just didn't think of it. And it's been to the betterment of efficiency in our office. Okay. So like it's something where, I just didn't think about it. Right. And sometimes if somebody comes from another office where they had different tools or worked for somebody else, it can just make it better for you, where I didn't. I started a department in a corporate job. So I was just making stuff up because I was the first one in there. And then I left and started my own business, and I never had anybody teaching me how to run that business or how to do things. So you're just always trial and error. Let's see what fits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always an option to be more efficient. Okay. So I guess the other little nugget is, okay, so now we gotten into onboarding. I want to like this 3-month trial thing. I've also heard many times over, slow hire, fast fire. So you maybe we picked the wrong person and it's not a fit. Is the 3-month trial still a thing? Is not trial, but like that you can get rid of somebody and like there's no issues there? Or is that just a thing of the past and it's been that long since I've been in a corporate situation?
So I think there's a lot of people that still use the language trial periods. There are people that do things that I think are kind of more questionable on whether we should be doing them or not. But essentially a trial period where it's like, this is my leeway of firing someone, that actually means absolutely nothing. Because most states, they have their employment laws. So if you're at an at-will state, you can fire anyone at any time for any reason, as long as you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted, so that you're not making sure you're not doing anything illegal with that. So it can be 3 months in, it can be 6 months in. If they're not a fit, they're not a fit. Even the states where they have more stricter employee laws and everything, where you have to give more of a reason and things like that, they're not an at-will employee state. Even within that 3 months, even if it's on day 2, you need to follow the same protocols and everything to let someone go as if it was on month 6. So we use this trial period to evaluate and I think make us feel safe as business owners to say, well, I'm going to make it known that I can let them go during this time if they're not working out. But guess what? You can let them go at any time if they're not working out. But I feel like when we start to put out this language of a trial period and we tell our team members that they're in this trial period, it creates this sense of fear, which actually produces, for some people, poorer results because they're operating from a place of fear versus like, this is my home. This is where I want to be. And they care about me. Because we use a lot of trial period language. We technically tell our employees, I don't care about you until you've crossed this threshold. Then I'm going to care about you. Then I'm going to invest in you. But if you don't invest in me and make me cared about in those first 3 months, am I actually going to believe that you're going to invest in me and care about me later? Or am I always going to feel like I'm on edge? I'm walking on eggshells here. So I really say, I tell my clients that I work with, we're not going to use any trial period language because you can let someone go for not doing their job at any time. we're going to make sure that we're actually training our team members. We're going to have an onboarding process, and we communicate what that onboarding process looks like. And sometimes it's a very short onboarding process, and sometimes it's a very long onboarding process, depending on how in-depth the role is and what we need to train somebody on. That's communicated. We have 30, 60, 90-day goals that are communicated. This person knows what they need to be doing. We just take away that language of you're in a trial period, because that team member is going to know if they're not meeting those goals, they're failing at the job. If they're meeting those goals, they're doing the right things. They're learning and they're growing with the organization. Those goals aren't you're going to be doing your job 100% at the end of week 2. It's like, okay, maybe at the end of week 2, we're only through a certain part of the training. Maybe at the end of the first 30 days, you're doing this type of work with assistance. The end of 60 days, you're doing it independently. Things like that. What does that look like to go from day one new hire to a fully trained team member?
So I know the other thing is too, I've made an assumption all the way through that this person is in your studio working with you side by side, but there is a quite like a rapid trend of the VA or the remote worker. And I know at one point during COVID, I had an employee that was working remotely. She was drawings all day long. So, when you are not in the same space, it's very easy to, well, quite frankly, forget about them. But also, how do you cultivate this rapport when they're not in the space? So how do you adapt to the onboarding process to a remote worker? Is that something that you've had to deal with?
Yeah.
Or employee?
Yeah, so there's a lot of positions that we hire that are fully remote for our clients, and there's other ones that are in office and other ones that are hybrid. When it comes to remote workers, as you said, Laura, sometimes you can forget about them. So you really have to be intentional. I know when I was back in my corporate days and I had one of my remote team members, it was easy to forget about her. It was easy because everyone else was in the office. Everyone else was there. And it was like I had to make an effort to bring her into those team conversations, especially because the position she was doing was different than what everybody else was doing. So she wasn't naturally being brought into the client conversations because she didn't do that type of client work. She was on like the back end of the client stuff after things were fully executed versus on the front end of the client work with the rest of my team. And she actually pointed out, thankfully she did. It was in a meeting. We were talking about her performance and some performance issues. And my director was in the meeting as well. And luckily this team member made a comment of every conversation she had with me was negative. She felt like we didn't have a good relationship. And I just remember listening to that and thinking like, well, I actually can't argue against this. Every conversation we do have is negative because we're always talking about the problems. She was having performance issues at that time. So it was always, let's dive into the problems because that was the purpose of our call. And then realizing I'm not passing her in the hallway. There's no quick hellos. There's no how's your day. There's no learning about, at that time, well, she didn't have kids yet, but it wasn't learning about what did you do over the weekend, like the conversations I have with the rest of my team. So it's making sure you're having those conversations to remember that they are a person and building that connection and things like that, that you're not just calling them up and getting on a phone call or a meeting with them if you have check-ins with your team members and just jumping right into the business stuff. It's how do we build that rapport? How do you ask those questions? How do you make them feel valued and a part of the team when they're not physically there? And so the onboarding, you're probably going to have to put a few more purposeful check-ins in that schedule. So a team member can come to you quickly for questions. Well, how can this person come to you quickly for questions? How can they ask it? Yes, maybe you have a communication tool where they can send you a quick chat or things like that. But what if they actually need that voice to voice, that face to face time, jumping on a video call, making them feel that you are actually there for them to get through this process. So you, instead of having maybe one formal check-in a day outside of training time, maybe you do 3 quick check-ins throughout the day. Instead of, one 30-minute check-in, it's 3 10-minute check-ins or things like that to say, I am here for you. Especially if you have a team member that's training with other team members and you're not leading that entire training, still making sure that they know that you're there for them.
Gosh, there's so much great information here, but I know I've already taken up so much of your time. So can you tell us, the listeners, where we can find you, everything from your podcast to Instagram to all the great places we can locate you?
Yeah. So if you go to growingyourteam.com, there on the website, you'll be able to find all the information about us. You can go to growingyourteam.com/podcast to get to our podcast. It's also available on all major podcasting platforms. It's a Growing Your Team podcast. And then we are over on Instagram at Growing Your Team.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.